Hello and welcome to Fi's Film. Today we will explain an American superhero film, the first film in Sony's Spider-Man universe, Venom. This video contains spoilers. Enjoy. It all starts when a probe from the Bioengineering Corporation's Life Foundations finds a comet covered in symbiotic life while searching the universe for new habitable planets. 4 samples are brought back by the probe, but one escapes, sending the craft crashing into the planet. The crash landed in East Malaysia on a space shuttle from the Life Foundation. An astronaut named J.J. Jameson III is the only survivor found by responding medical personnel. The survivor is placed inside an ambulance. Whatever had become attached to him had come to life and began to attack the other patients, flipping the car over and causing a collision. With the alien symbiote living inside of him, an EMT emerges from the wreckage. We meet reporter Eddie Brock, who resides in San Francisco with his fiancée Anne Weying, a lawyer who represents the Life Foundations and its CEO Carlton Drake. Eddie is well known for his television news program, The Eddie Brock Report, where he conducts investigations for the benefit of his audience. When Eddie arrives at work, his employer sends him to speak with Drake, but instructs Eddie not to question Drake about his work. Anne poses the same questions because she is aware of Eddie's temper issues, which led to his expulsions from New York. Investigative journalist Eddie Brock reads about these human trials in a classified document in the possessions of his fiancée and weighs hiring an attorney preparing a lawsuit defense for the Life Found. The Life Foundation recovers the other 3 and transport them to their research facility in San Francisco, where they discover the symbiotes cannot survive without oxygen breathing hosts, which frequently fatally rejects the symbiosis. Eddie discovers an email on Anne's computer that has details on 3 deaths that were definitely caused by the shuttle catastrophe. Eddie goes to interrogate Drake about his space travel program against his orders, but deviates from the plan and starts to inquire about the fatalities and how he is accountable for them. The interview is cut short by Drake, and Eddie's boss dismisses him, and separates from Eddie after being dismissed as well. Meanwhile, back in Malaysia, the EMT enters a nearby market by accident and begins to consume an eel. When the seller reprimands her for it, she slices his throat with the blade that the symbiote has formed around her arm. The symbiote releases quills that kill anyone who tries to assault her in retaliations while she is being watched by nearby onlookers. The symbiote then releases the EMT and hooks onto the elderly woman as the EMT approaches her. 6 months later, Drake is expanding his symbiotic research by conducting tests on homeless people. He speaks to one subject named Isaac to make it appear as if he is undertaking a groundbreaking task for humanity. Drake summons a symbiote into the room with Isaac and allows the entity to take over his body. He appears to be fine for a while until he begins convulsing, at which point the symbiote leaves Isaac's now dead body, having devoured his organs. Eddie is now unemployed and living alone in a small grade apartment in San Francisco. He goes to a nearby shop where he knows the clerk Miss Chen, but Eddie notices that she is constantly robbed for her money by a thug and is powerless to stop it. Dr. Dora Skirth, a scientist from the Life Foundations who is horrified by Drake's experiments on humans, approaches Eddie next. Eddie refuses to assist her in exposing Drake because he no longer cares about what happens to humanity. Eddie pays a visit to Anne's apartment only to find her returning from a date with her new boyfriend, Dr. Dan Lewis. Eddie tells Anne that he misses her and blames Drake for what happened to him when they are alone, but Anne tells him that it is his own fault that he has reached rock bottom. Eddie later contacts Skirth to ask her to join her on her mission. Skirth smuggles Eddie into the Life Foundation's headquarters. Eddie photographs the gruesome displays of the symbiote's victims. He recognizes one of the survivors as Maria, a homeless woman Eddie knows. He tries to break her out of the cell, only to be attacked by Maria. The symbiote in her body then latches onto Eddie, who flees. Eddie is pursued by security guards, but he now appears to have increased strength and agility, allowing him to flee. When Drake and his group discover Maria's body, they are aware that a symbiote specimen is still at loose. After convincing Skirth that Eddie was involved, Drake locks her in a cell where other symbiotes will murder her. Drake then dispatches a group of mercenaries under the command of Roland Trees to find Eddie. Odd symptoms begin to appear in Eddie. He craves strange foods such as decaying meat and frozen tater tots, and feels as though he is running a fever. A deep snarling voice begins to talk to him as well. He discovers Anne and Dan out on a date and proceeds to demonstrate his disorder by eating live lobsters while sitting in a lobster aquarium and going through other people's food. Dan and Ann decide that they must assist Eddie. Eddie has an MRI test performed on him by Dan. However, the frequency of the test results in an unpleasant distortions in Eddie's skull. Back at home, the loud music being played by Eddie's neighbors causes him agony once again. Before the symbiote transforms Eddie's face into a monstrous form and gets the neighbors to accept, Eddie tries to persuade him to turn it down and is laughed at. A little while later, Trees and his crew enter Eddie's house to kidnap him. Eddie tries to give up, but the symbiote has different ideas. Eddie is forced to fight off the mercenaries as they attack with the symbiote's assistance. Trees documents this to show Drake, who is impressed that Eddie is a good fit for the symbiote. Then, as additional mercenaries start to arrive, Eddie leaves his apartment. Eddie is being pursued as he looks for a motorcycle to ride through the city, up until Trees rams Eddie with his car. The symbiote aids him in taking out the thugs and gliding through the streets. As he gets closer to Eddie, the symbiote takes over his entire body and calls itself Venom. Another mercenary fires at Venom before he can kill Trees. His head gets bit off by Venom, who then flees. Eddie ends up close to a lighthouse, and there his bones magically begins to mend. Even though Eddie is horrified after witnessing a man's head being bit off, Venom, as the symbiote refers to itself, speaks to him and compliments him on being a fantastic host. Eddie is instructed by Venom to comply if he wants to live. Eddie, as Venom, scales the building where he once worked to hand-deliver evidence of Drake's crimes to his former employer. When a jet passes overhead and its frequency interferes with the symbiote, Eddie almost falls off the roof, but Venom is able to catch him before he hits the ground. Eddie tries to flee after leaving the evidence, but the mercenaries retry to capture him. Venom fights them off and then runs away. Anne passes by Eddie's apartment and notices that it is a crime scene. She brings Eddie to Dan's office for additional assistance. She is aware of Eddie's condition. Eddie is instructed by Venom to speak with Anne since he likes her. Even though Anne tells him it's not the right time, Eddie apologizes for his mistakes. Eddie undergoes yet another test and Dan finds that the symbiote is a parasite, which Venom does not like to be called of. Dan informs Eddie that the symbiote and he are effectively robbing each other's life, and Anne activates a high frequency that forces the symbiote to separate from Eddie's body. After Eddie goes, Venom escapes via the fence and attaches himself to a tiny dog. Then Trees and his men manage to capture Eddie and deliver him to Drake. The elderly woman from earlier goes to an airport and finds a little child to serve as a new symbiote host. Drake is located by the girl in San Francisco, whereupon the symbiote takes over Drake's body. Eddie is questioned by Drake over the locations of the symbiote. Riot is the name given to the symbiote that forms around Drake's body. Eddie discovers that Drake's strategy is to return to outer space and locate additional symbiotes to bring back to Earth so they can utilize people as hosts. Anne locates the dog hosting Venom and goes to the Life Foundations where he is now hosting Venom. Anne aids in Eddie's escape, bites off Trees' head, and then gives Eddie a kiss while transferring Venom back to him. Prior to Riot and Drake boarding the rocket, Eddie and Venom set out to locate them. The two men engage in combat using their symbiote forms as Anne activates a frequency to disorient them both and force the symbiotes to leave their host. Eddie is located by Venom, who then latches back onto him, curing the impalement wound. Then, as Venom severs the fuel line, they leap onto the rocket, which explodes, killing Drake and Riot. As Eddie plunges into the ocean, Venom appears to die in the rocket's flames. Eddie and Anne seems to have patched up their friendship at some point after that. He discusses being asked to revive his show and host a Drake special, but he has other plans to visit a prisoner. In addition, Eddie protects Anne from knowing that Venom is still inside him. As Eddie turns to leave, he runs into an elderly man who urges him to keep fighting for the things he values. Eddie accompanies Venom while trying to convince him that if they are going to stick together, they cannot simply consume anyone and that they may only hunt down the truly evil ones. The previous thug tries to approach Miss Chen for money once more as soon as he enters her store. In front of Miss Chen, Eddie changes into Venom and devours the thug. Venom tells Eddie that they can do whatever they want in response to his question about what they should do next. Mid-credits, Eddie visits San Quentin prison to speak with his most recent subject, Cletus Cassidy, a serial killer. After his release, Cassidy promises that there will be carnage.